Hey everyone, it's Ashley and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be an eyeshadow palette collection. I decided to do this video because I have gotten a couple more palettes since my last video, and I did get rid of a couple palettes, so I will be talking about that. So let's get started. I also just wanted to mention that I'm not trying to brag in any way. I just really enjoy watching these videos, and I know a lot of other people like watching these videos as well. I'm not really going in a particular order, but I'm going to start with the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette because this was my first ever eyeshadow palette. I do really like this palette. It is a cool tone palette. I know that these shades are not for everyone, but I've used this palette so much. As you can see, I've hit pan on this shade, and I'm very close to hitting pan on some of these other neutrally shades. I just love this palette, and I would definitely recommend it. It's perfect for beginners, and there are so many different looks you can create with it. I did take this traveling with me a couple of times, so this shade did break a little bit on the top here, but it's still definitely usable, and I will continue to keep this because I enjoy it still. It is very easy to use and great for everyday wear. The next palette I have to show you is the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. I got this at TJ Maxx on sale for like $30 or something like that. This is a nice palette. I haven't used it as much as I would like to. I definitely need to get some more use out of it. I really like some of these pinky shades, and then that shade right there is very pretty. I will probably swatch a couple of shades. I really do like this palette. It's not, I can see why it's not everyone's favorite because it is a little bit harder to use and it's not quite as pigmented as other palettes, but it's still nice, and if you see it on sale, I think it's worth grabbing. It is a bit more cool tone as well, so I know a lot of people don't like that as much. I love the smell of this palette. It smells very good, like chocolate, of course. Next, I'm going to talk about my Anastasia palettes. This is the Prism palette, which was the holiday palette a year or two ago. This palette is very interesting. The color story is different, and I've never seen a shade like Sphere. I don't really use that one a lot, but it's very interesting and good to have if you need a shade like that. This palette is kind of a weird combination, as I said earlier, but if you like the colors, the formula is amazing. I'll swatch a couple of these shades, and I have hit pan on this one, and I'm pretty close to hitting pan on that one. But here is a couple of the shades. Super great formula. This was my first palette, as I said earlier, and it just made me want to try another one. So I would recommend it if you like the colors and if you can get your hands on it. But yeah, very different. The next palette here is my other Anastasia palette. This is the Norvina palette. This is one of my favorite palettes that I own. It is just beautiful. It has all the colors that I like to wear. I love all the neutral shades. It's got some pinks and purples. I just love every shade in this palette. I did recently make a video with this palette, so I'll link that somewhere if you want to see. I'll swatch a couple of these shades, but I really like this palette. It has an amazing formula, and I would definitely recommend it. I'm going to swatch Dazzling, which is one of my favorite bronzy shades, and I'll do Celestial because that's one of the very pretty purpley shades. So there's Dazzling, and there's Celestial. And I honestly think that this has an even better formula than Prism. I would definitely recommend it. Like I said, it's one of my favorite palettes. If I could only have one palette, I might choose this one. Next, I'm just going to show you a couple of my very small palettes. This is the Huda Beauty Emerald Obsessions palette. I got this one for Christmas this year. This is a very pretty palette. I absolutely love it. Its swatch is amazing. It works great on the eyes. I just think all of these shades are very unique, especially that mint shade up there. You can create quite a few green looks with this, and I really like it. I would definitely recommend it if you like the color story. I will swatch a couple of these shades. These two are a couple of my favorite. It's It's just gorgeous. Like, that mint shade is pretty pigmented for such a pale shade like that. I would recommend it again if you like the colors. I would like to try more from Huda Beauty, but since they're pricing and I'm trying not to buy a whole lot of eyeshadow palettes this year. Next, I'm going to talk about these little Laura Geller palettes that I also got for Christmas. This one is the TGI Thursday Face, Eye, and Cheek palette. This has some very nice shades. It does have some nice olive tones. I really like those kinds of shades, as you will see in some of my palettes in a few minutes. But this is very nice. It does have a blush and a highlight, as well as the 4 eyeshadows. The other one is Tailor Made Monday Face, Eye, and Cheek palette. Here's what it looks like. I like this one better, I think, because it does have a couple more matte shades, and it's a little easier to create a full look with it. This highlight shade is very nice, and this pinky, icy purple kind of shade is also very pretty. So here's a couple of quick swatches of those. If you see these, they are nice mini and travel palettes. This is another one of my more recent purchases. This is the Colourpop It's My Pleasure palette, and this is a purple palette. As I said earlier, I love purples, and this also has a few pinks. I really like all of the shades in this palette, and I would recommend it. It's only $12, and I'll swatch a couple of my current favorite shades. They're just so pigmented and good for the price. You can create quite a few looks with this as well. And I haven't tried a whole lot of Colourpop, but I would definitely like to try more. But again, I'm going to try not to buy a whole lot more palettes this year. As you can see, I have quite a few that I need to play with. I also wanted to point out that this palette does have a very nice and large mirror. So it is also good for on the go. Next, I'm going to be getting into my Morphe palettes. The first Morphe palette that I've ever owned is the Jaclyn Hill palette. I have the original messy packaging, which is not my favorite. As you can see, there's eyeshadow all over it, but that's okay because it is meant to be worn. Here are all of these shades. This is also another palette that would be good for a beginner or someone that wants just one palette. This has pretty much all neutrals except for a few fun shades down here. It is a very good palette. I've had this for a little while now and I love it. I've used quite a few of these shades. A few of my favorites are these two neutrals. I really like this peachy shade up here. I would definitely recommend it. The formula of this is amazing. I did not end up trying the Vault collection, but I will swatch a couple of these. The formula of this palette is very good, and it is good quality for the price. So yeah, I would recommend this one as well. And I am getting close to hitting pan on this brown shade in these two. I have a couple of Morphe palettes in their plastic packaging. This is the 35V palette, and this one is kind of similar to the Jaclyn Hill palette in a way. It does have a lot of neutrals. It just has a few more rows of colors. And this is also a very nice palette. I would also recommend this for a beginner. It is a bit less expensive than the Jaclyn Hill palette, so this is also a great option. It has a bit more of the warm tones and cool tones, so there's a bit more of a mixture of the tones. I really like this palette. I'm going to swatch a couple of my favorite shades. Swatch this one, let's do this one. My swatches are not the best. If you would like to see like more swatches, I do have some videos of these palettes that have swatches in them. So that is a couple swatches from this palette. This next palette is the Morphe 35M palette. This one is a lot more colorful. There's a lot of really fun shades. I got this palette because, again, I really like purples. I also like greens on the eyes and orange tones. So I really like this palette. These colors are good for my skin tone. And I will swatch a couple of my favorite shades. I really like this purple This green is also very nice. And we'll swatch this orange. So, purple, green, orange. As you can see, these are also very pigmented. This is definitely a bit more of a bold palette, so if you like those kinds of bright colors, I would recommend it. Probably not for an everyday palette, but it is very nice for fun colors and Halloween looks and that kind of a thing. And the very last palette that I have to show you is the Morphe James Charles palette. I just got this palette. It is huge. I really like this palette so far, and I will have a video up on this very soon. I have used some of these purple shades, the blues, and some of these neutrals up here. I really like this palette. Again, it has a lot of bright colors, so if you aren't into that, you may not need this palette. But it does have this nice neutrally row. There's some neutrals here and some neutrals there. So I mean, you can create some neutral looks. You can create pretty much everything with this palette, which is what James Charles said that he wanted to do. It says unleash your inner artist right here. I don't know if you can see that. It is a very big palette. I used to have the 39A, which is the same palette and somewhat same format, but I decided to get rid of that one because, as you could see in all of these Morphe palettes, I pretty much had all those shades in that palette, and one of my friends wanted to have that palette, so I gave it to her. This palette is different from that palette, and I do think I like this one better, and again, I will have a video of this up very soon. I will swatch a couple of these shades. I know there's quite a bit of controversy about this palette, and I really do think that it's a very good palette. I don't think that there are any shades that I have encountered that have been like super hard to work with yet. I think people are overreacting a little bit, but this is a very nice and pigmented palette. As you can see, all of these shades swatch very nicely. I will swatch a couple more. This blue is just so pretty. It's so bright. Anyways, there's a couple swatches from this palette. Definitely one of my new favorites. The only other eyeshadow palette that I have had that I got rid of is the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. And it's not that that was a bad palette, I just wasn't using it. And as you can see, I had all of these shades in that palette in one of these palettes. So I gave that one to my sister. And anyways, I think that is it for this video. I really hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I would very much appreciate it. I have a lot of videos on pretty much most of these palettes, and I would love it if you check those out. I will link some of my playlists in the cards. And yeah, I'll see you in my next one. Bye!